Clara Barnes awoke to the faint glow of dawn filtering through the slatted blinds of their Upper East Side penthouse. For a moment, she lay motionless, listening to the distant rumble of traffic along Fifth Avenue. The world outside was already stirring, taxis speeding, early commuters rushing, but inside, the apartment was still. Next to her, Liam Barnes's side of the bed was empty, the sheets rumpled where he had slept. A pang of surprise cut through her chest. He was usually up by now, pacing the marble floors, barking last-minute questions about the corporate breakfast they would host at Barnes & Company headquarters later that morning. She slipped out of their king-size bed, careful to avoid the satin sheets that once felt luxurious but now only felt suffocating. Her dark mocha skin glowed in the pale morning light as she crossed the bedroom to the ensuite bathroom. There, she paused before the mirror. Her reflection stared back with hollow eyes. The woman staring at her, hair pulled into a neat bun, a crisp white silk robe cinched at the waist, exuded composure. Yet, Clara recognized the void behind those eyes, the part of her that had been swallowed whole by life as Liam's wife. She took a slow breath, steeling herself. In the mirrored medicine cabinet, she retrieved a small notebook, the one she had scribbled her plans into late last night. Flipping to the final page, she read the note she had written for him. "Don't look for me. I need to remember who I was before you forgot who I am." With trembling fingers, she tore the page free, folded it neatly, and placed it on the marble countertop. Then she turned away and stepped into the vast kitchen. Stainless steel appliances gleamed under recessed lights. A fresh baguette sat on a wooden cutting board, ripe avocados in a wicker basket, heirloom tomatoes in a porcelain bowl. Clara moved with practiced precision, slicing the baguette, smearing butter, layering avocado with a dusting of sea salt. She brewed Ethiopian coffee in the French press, inhaling its earthy aroma as though drawing strength for what she was about to do. At exactly 7:15 a.m., she turned off the coffee maker and blackened the stove. In the marble stairwell, she paused at the top step, looking down at the living room where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The portrait of their wedding day, prominently displayed on the console, felt like a memory of someone else's life. She had once believed those vows meant forever. Now, the words on that note felt coldly liberating. Clara retrieved a duffel bag from the closet, packed with casual clothes, her sketchbook, and a half-faded photo of her first solo gallery show, and slung it over her shoulder. She crossed the living room without looking back, her heart hammering like a war drum. At the front door, she paused, hand hovering over the doorknob, and whispered, "I'll come back when I find my voice again." Then she stepped out into the hallway, closing the door softly behind her, leaving the penthouse, and her life as Liam Barnes's wife, behind. Outside, a sleek black Lincoln Town car idled. Clara eased into the back seat, her duffel bag on her lap. The driver, a silent professional, tapped his rear-view mirror. "JFK Airport, Ms. Barnes?" She nodded, voice barely a whisper. "Yes. The earliest flight to Charleston, please." The car merged onto Fifth Avenue. As the skyline receded, Clara pressed her palm to the tinted glass. This was the start of her disappearance, an intentional vanishing from a world that had nearly erased her. Clara's flight landed in Charleston just after noon, the humid southern air greeting her like a kindly breeze. She retrieved her duffel bag from the baggage carousel and made her way to Harborview Car Rentals, where a young clerk slid her the keys to a 2015 Subaru Outback. "Enjoy Marlowe Bay," he said with a friendly nod. "No questions, no probing." The drive through South Carolina's coastal lowlands was nothing like the urban frenzy she'd left behind. Spanish moss draped from towering oaks, saltwater marshes stretched to the horizon, and the aroma of jasmine clung to the air. After a 2-hour journey down a ribbon of highway, Clara turned onto a narrow lane flanked by weathered picket fences and winding dunes. A pastel-colored sign reading "Marigold Books and Rooms" appeared on her right, its chipped white paint giving the place a lived-in charm. She parked in a gravel lot behind the building and took a moment to compose herself. The small bookstore, a 2-story structure with a seafoam green awning, looked as though it had belonged to the town for a century. She entered, the bell above the door jingling softly. The air inside smelled of old paper, beeswax polish, and a faint hint of lavender tea. Behind a knotty pine counter stood Eleanor Penrose, a petite woman with steel-gray hair in a loose bun and sky-blue eyes that danced with quiet curiosity. "Good afternoon," Clara said, voice steady despite nerves. "I'm here for the room." Eleanor smiled warmly. "Miss Barnes, I take it? Your father mentioned you might arrive today." "My husband," Clara corrected herself, throat tight. But even now, she felt the old reflex, to introduce herself in relation to someone else. She shook it off. "Just Clara." "Come upstairs and see for yourself," Eleanor said, leading her up a narrow, creaking staircase lined with black and white photos of Marlow Bay's past. Each image, fishermen hauling nets, children skipping stones, couples strolling the boardwalk, spoke of a slow, unhurried life. Upstairs, a small landing opened onto 3 doors. Eleanor opened the first. Inside was a modest room with a single bed, a wooden desk, and a window overlooking a brick wall wrapped in wild roses. The hardwood floors gleamed, and lace curtains fluttered in the breeze. "Cozy, but comfortable," Eleanor said. "Quiet neighborhood, friendly townsfolk. Rent's modest, and I won't pry. You only pay for the room, nothing more." Clara closed the door behind her and inhaled. Freedom tasted like salt air and reclaimed space. "I'll take it." "Wonderful. The pantry is on the ground floor. Self-serve. If you need anything, my door's always open." Clara nodded, gratitude welling in her chest. "Thank you." Later, she wandered the boardwalk, gray-green water shimmering under the afternoon sun. She paused at Prairie Wind's Cafe, where a barista with dark brown skin and a wide smile handed her a latte and a warm blueberry scone. Clara took a bite, feeling flour-dusted crumbs scatter across her lap. She opened her sketchbook and began to draw a white-brown pelican perched on a weathered post, its feathers ruffled by the breeze. By dusk, she returned to Marigold Books and sat in a wicker chair on the porch, the sky awash of lavender and rose. No calls from Liam. No search parties. Just the gentle hush of waves and the promise of anonymity. As she closed her sketchbook, Clara exhaled. In Marlow Bay, she could exist without expectation, just a woman rediscovering herself one pencil stroke at a time. Morning in Marlow Bay was a quiet symphony, the soft murmur of gulls, the rhythmic slap of waves, and the distant chime of the church bell. Clara rose before sunrise, drawn from sleep by the pink-gold glow seeping through her lace curtains. She dressed in a simple white t-shirt and navy leggings, far from the tailored power suit she once wore, and padded downstairs to find Eleanor humming a tune behind the counter, brewing chamomile tea. "Good morning," Eleanor said, pouring 2 cups into mismatched porcelain mugs. "First batch for you." Clara accepted a mug, the steam curling into her face. "Thank you." She picked up a bowl of fresh berries and dolloped thick Greek yogurt over them, balancing the porcelain bowl gingerly. The cafe area was small. 1 wooden table, a corner shelf of thrifted ceramics, and a stack of hand-bound journals. Eleanor set a plate of freshly baked lemon scones on the counter. "Help yourself," she said. "You look like you need fuel." Clara smiled, gratitude warming her. "I do." She nibbled a scone, its bright citrus notes cutting through her sleepiness. After breakfast, she settled at a corner table with her sketchbook and charcoal pencils. She flipped to a new page and began a life study of the dunes, sharp, confident strokes forming hills of grass and spindly marsh reeds. Each line felt like a reclamation, a revival of a part of her she had nearly forgotten. In New York, her art had been dormant, an afterthought behind brand strategy meetings and investor dinners. Here, art was her heartbeat. Mid-morning, the bell above the door jingled. Ella, an elderly woman who frequented the cafe, shuffled in. Her silver hair was tucked into a knitted cap, and a quilted tote bag dangled from her wrist. She peered over her spectacles at Clara's drawing. "That's beautiful," Ella said, voice raspy but warm. "Who taught you?" Clara looked up. "No one lately. I learned in art school. But it feels like I'm remembering more than learning." Ella nodded sagely. "Sometimes the ghosts of our past guide us home. Keep going, dear." She patted Clara's hand and moved to a table of her own. Clara's cheeks warmed. She returned to the dune study, shading deeper shadows and capturing the whisper of wind through the grass. Time slipped away. It wasn't until afternoon that she noticed her phone buzzing. 3 texts from Maya. "Liam's posted something about you." "Can you call me?" Everyone's wondering. Clara's stomach clenched. She shoved the phone into her bag, refusing to be pulled back into drama. Instead, she ventured out onto the boardwalk. The sun hovered above the horizon, setting the sky ablaze. She stopped at a driftwood bench, gazing at the ocean's endless expanse. In the hush, memories surfaced. The tiny Brooklyn studio where she'd sketched by candlelight, her first gallery acceptance letter, the thrill of painting with no expectation but her own. Those passions had been buried beneath duty to her husband's legacy, his relentless ambition. Clara closed her eyes, inhaling salt and possibility. The ghosts of her past no longer haunted her, they guided her. Here, she would reclaim her joy, stroke by stroke. 2 weeks later, Clara sat in the corner of Prairie Wind's cafe, sipping a cold brew topped with whipped cream and cinnamon. Her sketchbook lay open on the table, today's subject, a weathered lobster trap half buried in driftwood. She traced each nail, each flake of peeling paint with meticulous care. Art was her sanctuary, a way to remain anchored. Her solitude shattered when her phone buzzed again. A message from Maya. Urgent. Have you seen this? Clara frowned and opened the link, a grainy photo posted to Society Scoop, a social media gossip page. The image showed Liam Barnes standing arm in arm with Nina Carter under a flower arch that read Barnes and Company. Spring Gala. Both wore wide smiles, champagne flutes raised. The caption read, "His wife is missing, but he's thriving. Nina Carter picks up the pieces." #power couple. Clara's throat constricted. She stared at the screen, breath catching. She wasn't surprised that Liam had moved on, once they had talked about it. But seeing it displayed so publicly felt like a cold slap. Amateurs scribbled, "Wonder when she'll come crawling back." He couldn't wait. She was just a placeholder. Comments scrolled endlessly, echoing her humiliation. She closed the laptop and pushed her chair back so abruptly it scraped the floor. The cafe's cozy hum dimmed around her as she bolted outside. The salt air did little to calm her. She stalked along the boardwalk, heart pounding, legs quaking. Waves lapped at the shore, but Clara heard only the roar of her own blood. She turned a corner and found herself at a small dune overlook. A group of tourists snapped photos of the sunrise, oblivious to her turmoil. She raised her sketchbook, beginning to draw the jagged horizon, but her hands shook too violently. She closed it and hugged herself. A soft voice broke through her panic. "You okay?" Clara looked up to see Ella approaching. She held a basket of snapshots from a local art fair. Her eyes were kind but direct. Clara knelt beside the dune, brushing damp sand from her leggings. He's moved on. Ella placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. "He's his own person. That doesn't diminish your worth." Clara's lip quivered. "It's not just that. It's how he paraded her in front of everyone. Like I never existed." Ella settled beside her. "Cruelty wrapped in charm is still cruelty. You gave yourself away. Now it's time to build anew." Clara stared at the ocean's endless expanse. In that moment, she realized the choice before her: become bitter and retreat into despair, or rise louder than any gossip. She inhaled, tasting salt on her tongue. "You're right," she whispered. "I'm done letting others define me." Ella squeezed her hand. "Then let's get you back to those pencils. Show them who you are." Clara nodded, lifting her head. As they walked back to the cafe together, she felt the familiar pulse of create or die awaken within her. Liam could parade Nina, but he could never parade her spirit. That weekend, Marlow Bay hosted its annual Boardwalk Art Fair, a gathering of local painters, photographers, sculptors, and potters. The salty breeze carried the scent of grilled octopus and fresh lemonade. Booths lined the weathered planks, each canopy a miniature world of color. Hand-thrown pottery, recycled metal sculptures, abstract watercolors. Clara arrived early, her easel and table borrowed from Eleanor's stock. She displayed a dozen charcoal sketches, a battered lobster boat beached on dawn's horizon, a weathered fisherman casting a net, a silhouette of a child chasing seagulls. Each piece captured Marlow Bay's essence, raw, unvarnished, honest. She propped a small sign at the edge of the table, "Clara Barnes, rediscovering joy. A steady flow of visitors drifted by, murmuring compliments. A gray-haired art professor paused, squinting at Clara's piece of an elderly woman folding laundry in a sunlit doorway. "Remarkable," he said. "Your shading captures her dignity, and her solitude. I see heart in your lines." Clara smiled faintly. "Thank you." Pride prickled her chest. Her art was no longer hidden. It breathed beneath the canopy, open to evaluation on its own terms. Around midday, a tall man with deep espresso-brown skin approached her booth. He wore a tailored charcoal blazer over a white linen shirt, dark-washed jeans, and polished Oxford shoes. His short, coiled hair glimmered in the sun. He studied a charcoal portrait of a woman clutching an umbrella against a storm-lashed sea. "Your work, it's extraordinary," he said in a gentle British accent. Clara's chest tightened. "Thank you." She recognized his face from earlier visits to Marigold Books, always buying obscure poetry tomes, always with a quiet appreciation. She identified him as Julian Reed, but she had no idea of his status beyond "kind man who trusts my art." "Who is the woman?" he asked, nodding toward the sketch. Clara hesitated before choosing her words. She was a coastal matriarch, spent her life raising 3 children, alone much of the time. "I saw her from my window, and something about her silhouette stayed with me." Julian's eyes, dark and attentive, held hers. "I see strength in her. And sorrow." He paused, studying her face. "Is that from your memories, or are you channeling someone else's story?" Clara swallowed. "Both, maybe. Life's layers blend." He nodded and reached into his blazer pocket, pulling 2 crisp $100 bills. "I'd like that one," he said, pointing to the portrait. "And this one," he added, indicating the fisherman's sketch. Her breath caught. "I can't." Julian smiled softly, no arrogance in his gesture. "Consider it a gift. Just a way to support your journey." Clara shook her head, heart fluttering. "Thank you, but I—" He held up a hand, a gentle command. "No discussion. From one creator to another." She exhaled and accepted the bills. He folded the money carefully, placing it in her hand. "My name is Julian Reed," he said, offering a firm handshake. "I'll be back next week. I'd like to talk about a possible exhibit." Clara's pulse raced. "An exhibit?" He stepped away, still watching her carefully, as though gauging her reaction. "Yes. I have a gallery space at Thorntech's headquarters, not publicized, but intimate. I think your work needs that quiet attention." She forced a small smile, grabbing a business card from his pocket. "Thank you. I'll think about it." Julian tucked the card into her palm. "No rush. Just know I believe in you." Then he melted into the crowd. Clara stared at the business card, simple, embossed letters reading Julian Reed, founder and CEO, Thorntech, and felt a tremor of excitement and intimidation. He was not just a gentle patron, but a powerful man. And somehow, that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. That night, she lay in bed in her rented room, clutching the card against her chest. She had no idea what lay ahead, but for the first time in months, her heart felt fully alive. 1 week later, Clara typed out a text to Julian. "Thank you for your generosity. I'd like to know more about the gallery space." She hesitated before hitting send. Fear of rejection fluttered in her stomach. Within minutes, his reply appeared, "Dinner tonight at 6, at the bookstore. Let's discuss details." At 5:50 p.m., she arrived at Marigold Books, its windows aglow in the early evening. Julian waited quietly at a small cafe table. He wore a navy blazer over a crisp white shirt, no tie, paired with charcoal chinos. She spotted a wicker basket filled with fresh-baked sourdough, a thermos of chamomile tea, and a plate of fruit and artisanal cheeses. A vase of wild daisies added a homey charm. "Clara," he said, standing with a polite bow. "Good to see you." She smiled, sliding into the chair opposite him. "Thank you for inviting me." He poured tea into 2 mismatched blue-glazed mugs. "I thought we'd share something light. I remember you like chamomile." She lifted her mug, inhaling the aromatic steam. "It's perfect." They ate in companionable silence for a few moments, the clink of cutlery and hushed rustle of pages from passers-by forming a gentle backdrop. Then Julian cleared his throat. "I wanted to tell you more about the Confluence Lab." Clara straightened. "Ready." "I'm listening." He smiled. Thorntech's headquarters has a side gallery, unadvertised, reserved for intimate showings. I proposed showcasing local artists whose work intersects art and technology. You, for example, capture raw human emotion alongside natural elements. I think the Confluence Lab would be a perfect debut for your work. Clara's heart fluttered. "That's incredible. I'm honored. But I worry about my name overshadowed by my past." Julian's gaze was steady. "Your past fuels your art. People will relate to that honesty." She nodded, swallowing hard. "Okay." He grinned, relief and genuine excitement in his eyes. "Great. I'll handle logistics. The opening will be in 4 weeks, enough time to prepare. I'll fly you to New York. We'll stay at my loft." Clara hesitated. The offer felt both thrilling and frightening, exposing her vulnerability on a grander stage. But then she thought of the judge's pronouncements, the suffocating silences, the betrayal's sting. Saying yes meant rising above it all. "I'd love to do it," she said. Julian's face brightened. "Wonderful. Let's toast to new beginnings." He raised his mug. Clara matched his gesture. "New beginnings," she whispered. They clinked mugs, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara realized she was halfway to rebuilding her life, one courageous decision at a time. While Clara planned her gallery debut, New York City buzzed with crisis. Liam Barnes paced the floor of his high-rise office suite, eyes glued to his laptop screen as a financial news channel scrolled the headline, "Barnes & Company. Under federal investigation." His tailored midnight blue suit, once a symbol of power, now felt heavy, like armor weighed down by failure. An assistant hovered at the door. "Mr. Barnes, your meeting with the board is in 5 minutes." Her voice was measured, professional. Liam ran a hand through his thick black hair. "Tell them I'll be down shortly." She nodded and slipped away, leaving him alone with shattered illusions. He clicked through confidential documents, allegations of inflated revenue, falsified client contracts, and hush money payments to keep executives quiet. He pressed the back of his hand to his forehead, mind reeling. How did it unravel so fast? He had ignored red flags, brushed off concerns. Now every investor was fleeing. Up in Marlow Bay, Clara rose early, sketched the dunes at sunrise, and sipped chamomile. Her phone buzzed, 3 texts from Maya. "Have you been following the news? Liam's stock is plummeting. People are saying you were the real brain behind the brand." Clara exhaled, disappointed that her life no longer felt separate from his. She ignored the texts, knowing any reply would only pull her back into his meltdown. Instead, she focused on shading the silhouette of a coastal shack, each pencil stroke a reminder she belonged here. Later that afternoon, news images circulated on social media. Liam's sleek black SUV pulled up to boardroom 33 of Barnes & Company's glass tower. Under a hastily rented marquee that read, "Investor Emergency Meeting," a half-dozen men in gray suits congregated under umbrellas. Photos of Nina Carter beside him, her flawless makeup and glimmering smile, dominated entertainment blogs. The caption, "Nina's still here, but for how long?" Clara clicked through the images with a chill crawling up her spine. She remembered her last conversation with him. No apology, just entitlement. "I don't know why you're making a big deal. I can build this empire without you." How naive she had been. Back in his condo, Liam slumped onto the ivory couch as Nina approached, fresh from a networking event. She wore a sleek navy sheath dress, her confidence an unnatural complement to his despair. "They just pulled the brand manager position from your webpage," Nina said, voice cold. "Under our team, your wife's name is gone." Liam stared at her, eyes wild. "Clara? She's gone." Nina scoffed. "She left because she knew this would happen. And tonight, The board wants to know who's actually behind this mess. They're asking about your wife's photos on the website." He banged his hand on the glass table. "I didn't ask for this." Nina's eyes narrowed. "You asked for a scapegoat. Congratulations. She's the first one out the door. Now everyone thinks you can't survive without her. It's career suicide." Liam closed his eyes, heart thudding. Outside, the marble lobby glowed under floodlights. His empire, once gleaming, lay in ruins. In the pit of his stomach, a single truth settled. Losing Clara was the first step in losing everything else. Meanwhile, as dusk fell over the dunes of Marlowe Bay, Clara finished her sketch and packed away her pencils. She sensed something shifting, a distant tremor beneath her newfound peace. But she steadied herself, determined not to let his collapse define her. Clara awoke to the rare hush that followed a storm. Rain had pounded through the night, leaving everything washed and bright. She dressed quickly, navy jeans, a white linen blouse, and sipped chamomile on the porch as morning light shimmered off the wet boardwalk. Her phone buzzed, a message from Julian. "I need to meet you at Marigold Books, 10 a.m. urgent." Curiosity piqued. Clara grabbed her sketchbook and walked to the bookstore. As she approached, she spotted Julian standing behind the counter, staring at a glowing laptop screen. His usually composed demeanor seemed tense. "Julian?" she asked softly, stepping inside. He looked up, dark eyes shadowed with gravity. "Clara, I haven't been completely honest with you." Her stomach clenched. "What do you mean?" He slid a business card across the counter. "Thorn Tech, Julian Reed, founder and CEO." Clara's breath caught. She recognized the logo. Thorn Tech was that burgeoning privacy-centered AI firm making waves in the tech world. The very company he had once said was nothing special. You're the CEO," she whispered, voice trembling. Julian nodded, gaze steady. "I wanted you to know me as Julian, not as a CEO. I was afraid you'd focus on my status instead of seeing me." Clara's mind whirled. All the times he had appeared to be a humble book lover, purchasing obscure poetry, settling quietly in a corner of the cafe, had been carefully curated. She felt a sting of betrayal. "Why lie to me?" He met her eyes with apology. "I've been burned by people who only saw my title, never the man. I wanted our connection to be genuine." Scans of newspaper clippings and financial ledgers lay open on the countertop. "And this?" Clara asked, pointing. "Your work with AI?" Julian sighed, closing the laptop. "Thorn Tech specializes in secure data. We build AI algorithms that protect user privacy, health records, encrypted messaging, even secure election data. It's all confidential." Her pulse quickened. "You risked everything to keep this private. Why?" "Because I wanted a place like Marigold where I could just be Julian. I come here to breathe." He paused, studying her face. "I trust you with everything now, because you saw me before knowing the title." Clara exhaled, torn between admiration and hurt. "I appreciate your trust, but I need time to process." Julian nodded, a slight tension in his shoulders. "Take all the time you need. But know that when I say I believe in your art, your story, I mean it." Clara pocketed the card. It felt heavier than she expected, a tangible marker of status. But beneath the weight, she sensed an opportunity to stand beside someone who valued her authenticity. She squared her shoulders. "Thank you for telling me." Julian exhaled, relief flickering in his eyes. "Can I buy you lunch?" She met his gaze and, for the first time since his revelation, saw only sincerity. "I'd like that." 2 years earlier, the Barnes penthouse gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Clara, clad in a forest green sheath dress, floated through the dining room like a conductor, orchestrating every detail of Liam's investor dinner. Fine china, polished silver flatware, a hand-picked floral arrangement of white roses and peonies. She placed a crystal vase at the table's center and ran a hand over its smooth surface, forcing a serene smile. In the corner, a string quartet struck the first notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune. The soft melody floated across the room, setting a sophisticated tone. Liam, standing in his tailored midnight blue tuxedo, met each of the 10 investors with practiced confidence. The menu, lobster bisque with truffle creme, seared filet mignon with roasted root vegetables, and a decadent chocolate soufflé for dessert. Clara watched him with a complex swell in her chest, pride laced with something colder. As guests sipped Dom Perignon in crystal flutes, Liam raised his glass. "Thank you all for joining us tonight. Barnes & Company continues to push the boundaries of venture capital." Clara stepped forward, pressing the remote that advanced his PowerPoint slide, a sleek chart showing a projected 38% increase in ROI. She watched the investors nod, impressed. Behind the screen, her heart sank, for she recognized each line in the deck as her design, her writing. The graphs, the talking points, the color scheme, her creative soul manifested in pixels. Liam scanned the room, making eye contact with an investor at the far end. "It's all about innovation. And none of it would be possible without my incredible team, especially my wife, Clara." He paused, smiling at her. "She's the unsung hero behind our brand's vision." Clara's chest tightened. She forced a grateful nod, but inwardly, she seethed. Her contributions were essential. She had cooked every course, designed the deck, co-written speeches, yet this token acknowledgement felt like a hollow echo. The applause that followed was polite but perfunctory, as though they were clapping because it was expected. Later that night, in the privacy of their bedroom, silk sheets, dim sconces, Liam stretched out on the chaise and called her over. "You did great tonight." Clara sat beside him, collecting her composure. "Did you mean it?" He exhaled, running a hand through her hair. "Of course. You did all the work." Her lips twitched. But unsung hero, that phrase felt more like a consolation prize. Liam lapsed into silence. Clara turned away, mascara-bright tears blurring her vision. "I can't spend my life behind the curtain," she whispered. He didn't respond. She gathered her sketchbook from the floor, the one she'd stashed under the bed, opened to a blank page, and began to draw unbidden, a single candle flame flickering in total darkness. It was a declaration. If she remained unseen, she would still burn. And from that night on, she quietly began mapping her exit, each detail, each sneaking away, a step toward reclaiming her life. 4 weeks later, Clara found herself in the heart of Manhattan's design district, standing before a gleaming glass building. Parsons the New School for Design. A banner above the entrance read, "Design and Identity, a Panel Discussion." She clutched her black blazer in nervous hands, her first foray back into the professional world that had once swallowed her whole. Inside, the atrium buzzed with energy. Students in eclectic prints, faculty in minimalist attire, and a handful of industry insiders milling about. At a sleek podium, a tall woman with closely cropped curls, Professor Isabel Cohen, introduced Clara. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Clara Barnes, a talented artist and brand strategist whose journey from corporate to creative has inspired countless women. Today, she shares her story on identity, resilience, and reclaiming one's narrative." Clara's pulse thundered as she stepped forward. The auditorium lights glared, and a hush fell. She paused before the mic, scanning the crowd. In the front row, she spotted Julian's familiar silhouette, no blazer tonight, just a fitted black shirt and dark jeans, his eyes fixed on her. She squeezed her notes, taking a long breath. "Thank you for having me," she began, voice steady despite the churning in her gut. 2 years ago, I stood in a penthouse much like this one, commanding attention yet feeling invisible. I was a brand strategist, the wife behind a CEO's success, my creativity hidden beneath PowerPoint templates and investor presentations. Then I vanished, journeying to Marlow Bay to rediscover myself. A slide clicked on screen, a charcoal sketch of a weathered fisherman clutching his net. Art became my language again. I sketched every sunrise, every wave, each line a reclamation of my voice. She paused as the next slide revealed the Parsons logo and a photo from the Confluence Lab opening at Thorn Tech's headquarters, a minimalist gallery space with her seascapes glowing under soft track lights. Julian Reed, a CEO I met in a small bookstore, believed in my work before I believed in myself. He offered me the Confluence Lab, a space where my art could thrive without filters. Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the audience. Clara advanced to another slide, a clip of her chart-topping podcast, The Anonymous Room, with hosts sharing stories of reinvention. "My message is simple," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "Your identity is not what others build for you. It's what you create for yourself. When you feel invisible, pick up a pencil. Sketch your truth. Because if you don't tell your story, someone else will tell it for you." A swell of applause filled the room. Students rose to their feet, shouting praise. Professor Cohen motioned for a microphone. "Clara Barnes, you are remarkable. Thank you for sharing your truth." As Clara stepped off stage, Julian enveloped her in a congratulatory hug. "You were brilliant," he whispered. Clara exhaled, relief and exhilaration coursing through her. She smiled at the sea of faces, future designers and artists, and realized that her test had been passed. She was no longer an echo in someone else's story. She was its author. Clara Barnes sat on the wicker bench outside Marigold Books, the early dawn light painting the sky in a wash of lavender and gold. She sipped her chamomile tea, sketchbook open in her lap, intent on capturing the morning's gentle hues. Her phone lay face down beside her, silent for weeks. She cherished this digital silence. No pings from Liam, no news alerts. Suddenly, it buzzed. The screen lit up, Liam Barnes. Her heart jolted. For a moment, she hesitated. She had broken free of his world, and now here he was, intruding. She pressed answer, voice quiet. "Hello. Clara, it's me," Liam's voice quavered. Evening dew coated his words with desperation. Clara let out a measured breath, bracing herself. "Liam," she said, control threading her tone. "What do you want?" He cleared his throat. "I saw your speech online. Viral. I'm proud of you. But I need to talk." His voice cracked. "Can we meet?" Clara glanced at the empty bench beside her. No more shared seats, no more invitations. "Why?" she asked. "You've said everything on social media." He exhaled, ragged. "I need to be heard. I am lost. You were the cornerstone of our lives. Without you, I don't know who I am." Her chest tightened. She remembered the compromised nights spent crafting his keynote decks, waiting up until he returned in suits pressed by someone else's laundry. Now his empire lay in ruins. He sounded small, vulnerable, even. "I'm not your cornerstone, Liam," she replied firmly. "I'm building my own life." "Please," he whispered. "Just 10 minutes. I owe you that." Clara's gaze drifted to her sketchbook, open to a charcoal portrait of a woman standing on a wind-swept dune. The woman's gaze was resolute, turned permanently toward a horizon that promised nothing but renewal. Clara lifted her head, meeting the rising sun. 10 minutes isn't enough," she said softly. "Goodbye, Liam." She ended the call, her pulse steady. She set her phone aside, sipping her tea with calm resolve. The sky blazed with possibility. Liam's plea had passed through her, but she wouldn't let his world pull her back. Her voice, and her life, belonged to herself now. 2 days later, Liam sat in the single-seat comfort of his high-rise condo's living room, the city skyline a blur of muted grays under stormy clouds. He stared at the unopened divorce papers on the glass coffee table and felt the weight of them press on his chest. His phone lay on the leather ottoman, screen showing Clara's number, but no recent call logs. A knock at the door jarred him from his thoughts. Click, click. He rose and opened it to find Nina Carter. Her onyx skin glowing under the hall's recessed lighting, her tailored navy sheath dress as sharp as her demeanor. She held a small leather folder against her chest. "Nina," he said, voice tight. "What are you doing here?" She stepped inside without invitation, placing the folder on the coffee table with deliberate force. "We need to talk." Liam closed the door behind her. "There's nothing to say." Her green eyes flickered with frustration. "There's everything to say. I'm leaving." His brow shot up. "What?" Nina crossed her arms. "I'm not your rescue blanket, Liam. I thought I could help you rebuild, but you're still the same man who gaslit me from the start. Liam's hands balled into fists. This is about Clara. You were never in love with me. She raised an eyebrow. I was in love with what I thought you represented. Power, prestige, unshakable confidence. Now your company's tanked, your name's mud, and I see the man behind the mask. He's broken, and I won't stay for that. Her words cut deep. Liam stared at the folder. Is that my separation agreement? She exhaled, sliding it toward him. 2 months' notice. I'll pack my things tonight. Don't call me. She turned toward the door, pausing in the threshold. You're empty without applause, Liam. Goodbye. Then she closed the door, leaving him alone with the folded folder and the echo of her footsteps. Liam sank onto the couch, the distance between himself and everyone he cared about gaping wide. He picked up the folder with trembling fingers. Inside were her move-out details and a letter. Thank you for teaching me that mocking someone's faith in them can't replace genuine love. His heart twisted. Alone, in his silent condo, he realized that in losing Clara, he had also driven away the one person who believed in him, however briefly. In Marlow Bay, Clara awoke to a text from Isha Patel. Julian's company is in trouble. Are you okay? She stared at the screen, heart drumming. Julian's company, Thorn Tech, had been her anchor. She feared the worst. Downstairs at Marigold Books, she found Julian hunched over his laptop, brows knit. Wild morning light filtered through the windows, illuminating his dark brown skin. Julian, she asked, voice tight. What's wrong? He looked up, eyes rimmed with fatigue. Thorn Tech is being sued, class action. Investors' claim data was mishandled. It's baseless, but the press is calling it a data breach scandal. Clara's breath caught. How could this happen? He ran a hand through his coiled hair. A whistleblower alleged our newest AI algorithm scraped user data without proper consent. It's not true. We built those protocols myself. The evidence is falsified, documents forged to incriminate us. Clara's hand flew to her chest. Memories flooded back, nights spent poring over wireframes, Julian's impassioned lectures on user privacy, the countless hours he spent defending user confidentiality. The thought of betrayal crushed her. Who would do this? She asked, voice shaking. Julian closed his laptop. A competitor, I suspect, someone threatened by our growth. But when you fight in the dark, tactics get messy. He slid printed documents across the counter. Doctored memos, fabricated emails, falsified consent forms bearing his signature. The ink smudged as Clara held the pages, each line confirming the deceit. Tears pricked her eyes. You trust everyone, she managed. He exhaled, sorrow softening his features. I learned to let the truth speak louder than any defense. The lawyers have all the evidence. I just needed you to know. Clara closed the folder, resolving to protect their truth. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Julian. We'll prove them wrong, she whispered. Together. He held her tight, relief flickering. Thank you for believing. Clara kissed the top of his head, resolve bolstering her spirit. As they held each other in the silent bookstore, she knew that this betrayal would only strengthen them. No falsified documents could sever the bond between truth and trust. 2 evenings later, as twilight draped Marlow Bay in muted purples, Julian knocked gently on Clara's door. She opened it to find him holding a small, wooden box. His dark eyes shone in the dim hallway lantern. May I come in? He asked softly. Clara nodded, stepping aside. He entered, placing the box on her coffee table. Inside lay a simple silver key, weathered, almost antique, with an engraved C+J on its bow. A folded note lay beside it. For the cabin, whenever you're ready. Clara picked up the key, running her thumb over the engraving. Is this? Julian sank onto the arm of her wicker chair. It's the key to my cabin in the Blue Ridge Valley. I want you to have it, not just as a token, but as an invitation. Would you build something with me? He paused, searching her face. Not just a company, a life. Her breath caught. Memories swirled, meeting Julian, his gentle patience, their late-night conversations about art and AI, his unwavering support. She swallowed, tears gleaming. A life. He stood, stepping closer. I want you by my side, co-leading the Confluence Lab and living here part-time. I love you, Clara. Not because you saved me, but because you are you. Clara's heart thundered. She pressed the key to her chest. But what about New York? He shook his head, a tender smile curving his lips. We'll find balance. I have a loft in Manhattan. You come to visits. But imagine mornings at the cabin, coffee on the porch, sketching the pines. Her chest tightened with emotion. That sounds perfect. Julian knelt, opening the wooden box to reveal a slim, silver band inside, almost like a wedding ring, but simple. No ring yet, he said softly. This key is my promise. When you're ready for everything, estate, hand-fasting, whatever, we'll make that next step. Clara knelt beside him, slipping the key onto a delicate chain around her neck. It's the most beautiful promise I've ever received. He rose, drawing her into an embrace. Under Marlowe Bay's gentle starlight, they swayed in perfect harmony, two souls forging a new path where vulnerability and trust bloomed like wildflowers. The next morning, Clara received an email from Maya. They arrived, your divorce papers. Clara's chest fluttered as she opened the attachment. Her name, Clara Barnes, was printed in crisp black letters atop official documents from the New York County Family Court. She exhaled, a sense of finality washing over her. This was the last tether to her life as she had known it. At the courthouse in Manhattan, Liam sat in the visitors' gallery, eyes hollow beneath fluorescent lights. He wore a charcoal suit, once sharp, now wrinkled from restless nights. He clutched a paperback novel he hadn't read, its pages dog-eared from nervous fumbling. The judge, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair and wire-rimmed glasses, called Liam's name. He rose shakily and approached the bench. Clara entered moments later, emerging from the public doorway in a tailored navy dress and ivory heels, her posture poised, confidence etched into her every step. Liam's breath caught as she passed him, soft perfume leaving a trail of familiarity he hadn't realized he'd missed. They stood on opposite sides of the bench. Liam tried to speak, opening his mouth. But Clara raised a single finger. Your Honor, I waive any spousal support, she said crisply. Her voice carried the tempered strength of someone who had reclaimed her power. The judge's gavel tapped. Very well. Liam watched as Clara signed her name with a flourish, each stroke sealing his fate and hers. His own signature wavered as he scrawled beneath hers, relinquishing any claim to her future. Outside, the spring air was cool and brisk. Clara crossed the street to the black Lincoln Town car waiting curbside. Julian emerged from the back seat, awaiting her arrival. He gazed at her with quiet pride. Clara slid into the limo's plush leather seat, handing Liam's documents to Julian, who tucked them into a satin-lined case. She turned her gaze to the rearview mirror, connecting with Liam's eyes for a fleeting moment. No anger flickered there, only a weary acceptance of what once was and what now lay beyond. As the limo door closed, sealing her from that chapter of her life, the engine purred forward. Clara leaned back, inhaling her own scent, fresh linen, chamomile, and something new, absolute, unshakable freedom. 2 days after the divorce, Clara walked through the sleek glass doors of Thorntech's Manhattan HQ. The lobby's minimalist design, white marble floors, brushed steel accents, and a wall of living greenery, felt a world away from Marlowe Bay's quaint charm. She adjusted her navy blazer and gripped her leather portfolio, nerves tempered by determination. Julian met her at the reception desk, his tailored black suit crisp and impeccable. "Ready?" he asked, eyes alight. Clara nodded, stepping onto the private elevator with him. They ascended to the 32nd floor, where the Confluence Lab sign gleamed in brushed aluminum. The doors slid open to reveal a broad open space. High ceilings, pristine white walls, and spotlights poised over large, framed canvases of Clara's seascapes. A long ebony conference table sat in the center, its surface glossy and uncluttered. Julian gestured. "Come take a look." Clara's pulse quickened as she examined her art displayed like jewels, each charcoal wave, each pastel sky capturing the resonance of Marlowe Bay. She traced her finger over one frame labeled Morning Light, LBI 2025. A sense of pride swelled. Her work was no longer buried under investor decks. It belonged here, on these walls. He guided her to a leather-clad chair at the conference table, pulling out a thick press release titled The Confluence Lab, Thorntech's Creative Innovation Space, embossed with her name beneath his. "I've included your title as Creative Director," he said, sliding it across to her. Clara exhaled, eyes scanning the document, bullet points highlighting her mission, her design philosophy, and her role. Under Clara Barnes, the line read, "Responsible for curatorial vision, community outreach, and creative strategy." She leaned back, emotion welling. Julian added, "Once this goes live, you'll be a trending topic. Clara Barnes, the Confluence Lab's creative visionary." He smiled, watching her reaction. She folded the press release carefully and signed beneath the signatures of the board members Julian had secured. Each stroke felt like an affirmation. She wasn't hiding anymore. As she rose, Julian linked arms with her. "Ready to make headlines?" Clara nodded, heart thundering with exhilaration. "Let's do this." They stepped into the conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city skyline. Below, the streets bustled with possibility. Above, the Confluence Lab's promise stood tall, a testament to Clara's rebirth and the power of her voice. 1 week later, Clara found a sharply folded invitation in Eleanor's pantry. Limo arrives at 5:45 p.m. Friday. Downtown Manhattan. Dress, evening glam. Her chest fluttered. Tomorrow was her first public appearance as creative director of the Confluence Lab, and Julian insisted she arrive in style. That evening, Julian arrived at Marigold Books exactly at 5:45. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, white shirt buttoned at the collar, no tie, his dark skin glowing under the street lamps. In his hand was a long garment bag. Clara opened the door in a simple teal sheath dress, buttoned denim aesthetic. Julian smiled and handed her the bag. "Here." She unzipped it to reveal a midnight blue silk gown, its fabric catching stray lamplight in subtle ripples. An asymmetrical neckline hugged the collarbone, while the skirt billowed to the floor. With a small gasp, she realized the gown was tailor-made. "You're stunning," Julian murmured. "Rise with me tomorrow." Clara's pulse spiked. "Rise." He nodded, guiding her into the limo waiting curbside, a black stretch Lincoln whose tinted windows and plush leather seats felt like a throne room. "Put it on." Inside the limo, a personal valet, a petite woman with a no-nonsense expression, unfolded the gown and helped Clara into it. The silk slid over her dark mahogany skin like water, hugging her curves and flaring elegantly at the hem. She buttoned it up at the side, feeling the weight of centuries of elegance woven into the fabric. Julian handed her a slim pair of silver stiletto heels. "These." She slipped them on, each click of the heel resonating beneath her. Then he revealed a small diamond pendant on a white gold chain, just a single solitaire suspended like starlight. She placed it around her neck, shivering at the delicacy. "You look reborn," Julian said, voice low. Clara studied her reflection in the limo's tinted window. She was both fierce and luminous, a woman who had chosen herself. She ran a hand over the gown's bodice. "Thank you." He wrapped an arm around her, guiding her head to his shoulder. "You're not carrying someone else's legacy anymore." The limo glided through the evening's chill, steering Clara toward a destiny she had once only dared to imagine, a woman reborn in silk, stepping boldly into the limelight of her own design. The morning sun glinted off the marble columns of New York's civil courthouse. A small crowd of reporters held smartphones aloft, waiting for Clara Barnes's arrival. Inside, a hush settled into the grand lobby. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, and a long line of metal detectors. Clara emerged from the limo at 9 a.m., stepping onto the red carpet laid out for media spectacle. She wore the same midnight blue silk gown from the Confluence Lab fitting, hugging every curve, the stiletto heels glinting on the red carpet. Beside her, Julian, in a tailored black tuxedo, offered a supportive arm. She took a measured breath, aware that every flash of cameras, Every whispered question would be dissected by tabloids and social feeds alike. Her dark mahogany skin glowed in the crisp morning air. At Liam's side, waiting for the main entrance, he looked gaunt, suit rumpled, eyes hollow under circles of shame. His own exodus had begun. A reporter called out, "Ms. Barnes, any remarks before court?" Clara paused, then offered a brief, graceful nod. "Today is the start of my next chapter." She swept past the cameras, ascending the courthouse steps with Julian. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension, remote feeds to news outlets, Liam seated at the plaintiff's table, and Clara at the defense podium, though she was her own defense in this case. A judge, robes cascading around her, entered. Liam rose, fumbling for words that never came. Clara rose next, her figure poised, chin lifted with resolute grace. The judge peered over her glasses. "Ms. Barnes is the petitioner. Mr. Barnes, you may address the court." Liam swallowed, voice quaking. You don't have to hate me." Clara raised a hand. "Hate is emotional labor I'm retired from," she said softly. The courtroom stilled. Cameras whirred. Liam's paper mask of composure cracked. The judge's gavel tapped. "Divorce is hereby finalized. Ms. Barnes's waiver of spousal support is noted. This case is closed." Clara drew her signature in ink, fluid and irreversible. She closed her eyes, exhaling. She had severed the final tie. Outside the courthouse, Julian embraced her as a wall of cameras and reporters surged. She lifted her face to the sky, tears mingling with the breeze. In that moment, Clara Barnes was free, unshackled from a past that had nearly swallowed her. She smiled at Julian, hands slipping into his. "Let's go home." That evening, Clara returned to Marlow Bay, walking the familiar boardwalk as the sun dipped low. She found Julian waiting by the dunes, the cabin's porch lights glowing in the distance. In his hand, he held a small leather journal embossed with her initials. They walked hand in hand toward the cabin, where wind chimes tinkled in the warm breeze. Julian stopped on the weathered wooden steps and turned to face her. "Tonight is for celebrating you," he said softly. "But first," he opened the journal to a fresh page, blank lines ready for her words. "Here, write your first official entry as Clara Barnes, no longer Mrs. Barnes." Clara exhaled, tears shining in her dark eyes. She took a fine-tip pen and wrote, "In this space, I reclaim my story. I am an artist, a founder, and the author of my destiny." She closed the journal, sliding it into her tote. Julian pulled 2 glasses of Bordeaux from a weathered bottle, a vintage they'd selected together. They sipped in silence, watching the waves roll toward the shore. Suddenly, Clara slipped off her sandal, stepping barefoot into the sand. She ran her fingers through the grains. Cool, comforting. "Liam tried to call today," she admitted. "He sounded broken." Julian placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "He's the architect of his downfall." Clara nodded, closing her eyes. "I don't hate him. I just want peace." Julian kissed her forehead. "You deserve nothing less." They rose and walked to the cabin's wooden railing, side by side. Above them, a crescent moon glimmered. As the night air filled with salt and starlight, Clara realized that her exchange, her divorce day, had granted her something more than legal closure. It had given her permission to be fully, unapologetically herself. Late one night, Clara sat on her porch swing with her sketchbook open, the moonlight pooling across its pages. She was composing a charcoal study of the dunes when her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Your story gave me courage. Thank you." Attached was a photograph, a young woman standing at a train station, clutching a battered suitcase, tears glistening on her cheeks. The caption read, "I'm going to start again." Clara's breath caught. She didn't know this person, yet their vulnerability mirrored her own. She stared at the image, corrugated metal beams overhead, the rusted platform, the sun setting beyond the rails. The young woman's eyes were fixed on the horizon, hope warring with fear. Clara typed a quick reply, "You are brave. Your journey is yours to write." "Clara," she sent it, then closed her phone, staring at the stars emerging in the sky. The next morning, she shared the message with Julian as they sipped lattes on the deck. "Someone wrote me last night, anonymously, thanking me for my story and sharing their own." Julian's dark eyes softened. "Your journey is a spark for others." Clara nodded. "It's no longer just my healing. It's about helping others find their voice." That day, she drafted the concept for the Anonymous Room, a space where women and men could share how they reclaimed themselves after being erased or silenced. She envisioned podcasts, video essays, and community forums, stories under pseudonyms, free from judgment. That evening, Clara received another photo from the same number, a silhouette of a woman painting on a rooftop at sunrise. The message, "I'm starting with my art again." Clara smiled, tears pricking. She looked at Julian, who wrapped an arm around her. This is why I had to walk away." Julian kissed her temple. "You're creating ripples." As the sun set, Clara typed responses of encouragement, feeling the transformative power of her story extend far beyond her own life. 3 days later, Clara and Julian sat in the cozy loft corner of the Confluence Lab, mapping out the launch of the Anonymous Room. The room itself would be a small, soundproof studio with a single microphone and a stool against a backdrop of soft, textured fabric. Filmed in silhouette, each guest's face would remain hidden, their voices, uncut and unfiltered, at the forefront. Clara tapped her tablet, showing Julian the website mock-up. AnonymousRoomPodcast.com featured a simple logo, a keyhole-shaped silhouette, and a tagline, "Your silence was never weakness." Julian leaned over her shoulder, adjusting the color palette. "I love it. It feels safe, yet powerful." Clara nodded, eyes alight. "We'll launch with 5 episodes, stories of leaving controlling relationships, leaving toxic jobs, leaving self-doubt behind. Each episode around 30 minutes, enough to dive in, but not overwhelm." Julian smiled, clicking, publish. "Go live." Clara exhaled, hands trembling. Go. Within hours, the Anonymous Room appeared on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The first episode featured a woman named Celeste, detailing how she'd left her husband after he belittled her every creative endeavor. The second, Marcus, shared how he came out to his conservative family and lost everything, only to find a community who celebrated him. That evening, Clara returned to her cabin porch to find dozens of messages in her inbox. "I see myself in Celeste. Thank you for giving me strength to leave my job. This is exactly what I needed." Tears sprang to her eyes. Her story had sparked a cascade of courage. She barely slept, imagining each anonymous voice finding freedom in the dark. The next morning, over coffee, Julian noted, "Your podcast is already trending in the top 10. Clara set aside her mug, overwhelmed yet grounded. "This is bigger than me." He wrapped an arm around her. "And because of that, you'll change more lives." Clara exhaled, feeling the weight of purpose settle in her chest. Through the Anonymous Room, her silence had transformed into a chorus of liberation for thousands she would never meet, but whose lives she would touch. Back in Manhattan, Liam Barnes watched the latest news from his cramped studio apartment, far smaller than his former condo. Reports scrolled, "Barnes and Company. Files for bankruptcy. Former Torntech billionaire Liam Barnes slams doors on all clients. Liam's ex-wife rises as industry icon." His face, once lit by the glow of corporate triumph, was now pale, haunted. He paced the cramped living room as creditors called, lenders threatened foreclosure, and enemies gloated on social media. He thumbed through his phone, hundreds of unanswered messages from former allies and opportunists. His world, meticulously constructed, had crumbled in mere weeks. He parked the phone and sank onto the couch, head in his hands. Outside, the city pulsed with indifferent energy. The last straw came when a sponsored post scrolled across his feed, "Clara Barnes, from wife to viral visionary, 5 lessons from her journey." It summarized her rise, Thorn Tech's Confluence Lab, her podcast success, her influential artwork. Anger flared. He dialed her number, but it went straight to voicemail. He tried texting, but she blocked him. His chest tightened as he reread her final message. "Hate is emotional labor I'm retired from." A knock at the door startled him. It was Elliot Gray, his former PR manager, billed now as crisis consultant. Elliot's sandy hair was mussed, his suit rumpled. He looked at Liam with pity. "They're pulling your creditors on Monday," Elliot said, fanning a stack of court notices. "You need a plan, Chapter 11, or you'll lose everything." Liam clenched his jaw. "Why should I care? Clara's the only one who mattered." Elliot's brow furrowed. "She built your brand. Now the world knows it. You have no goodwill left." Liam stared at the peeling paint on his wall, remembering the portrait of him and Clara celebrating Barnes and Company IPO. He felt the portrait crack, shattered by truth. "Is there any way to salvage my reputation?" he asked in a hoarse whisper. Elliot placed a hand on his shoulder. "In this world, you need authenticity, Liam. It's too late for you and Clara. But you can rebuild, away from your old empire." Liam closed his eyes, sorrow and regret battling in his chest. Outside, the city's roar continued, unrelenting, unforgiving. He realized then that his downfall was self-inflicted, his arrogance the true enemy. In Marlow Bay, Clara had found freedom. Here, he was trapped in a cage of his own making, one that might never open again. Early Saturday morning, a crisp breeze drifted through the pine-laced air of Blue Ridge Valley. Clara stepped out of the cabin, the dew cooling her bare feet. The field before her had been transformed, a simple wooden arbor entwined with wildflowers, wooden chairs set in neat rows, and a small altar raised on a weathered platform. Only 40 guests, family and close friends, would attend. No photographers. No press. Julian emerged from behind the arbor, waiting. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, white shirt open at the collar, no tie. His dark brown skin glimmered in the soft light. Clara approached in a pale mist-blue gown that flowed like water. Her dark curls were pinned back with a single white rose. He took her hands, smiling with awe. "You take my breath away." Clara's eyes glistened with tears. "We said no photographers." Julian nodded. "I want this moment just for us." They turned as the string quartet, Ella on violin, Marcus on cello, and 2 local musicians, played a gentle prelude of Bach's Air on G string. Clara's closest friend from Marlow Bay, Madeline, escorted her down the makeshift aisle, her presence a reminder of roots and renewal. They joined beneath the arbor. Eleanor Penrose stood as officiant, leaning on a worn wooden lectern. Her steel-gray hair shimmered in the sun. "Dear friends, we gather to witness the union of Clara Barnes and Julian Reed, 2 souls who have found strength in each other." Julian opened a small wooden box, revealing 2 simple bands, one silver, one rose gold. "Clara Barnes," he said, placing the silver band on her finger. "Thank you for not rescuing me." Clara slid the rose gold ring onto his finger. "Thank you for letting me rescue myself." They turned to face each other, their fingers entwined. With a soft, mutual breath, they kissed, lips trembling with shared triumph and tenderness. The valley air seemed to hush, the trees leaning in as though bearing witness. Afterward, they walked the field arm in arm, their guests following in a loose circle. No speeches, only laughter, a few tears, and simple toasts of sparkling apple cider. Clara and Julian danced under the arbor as dusk settled, the mountains framing them like silent sentinels. As stars winked overhead, Clara rested her head on Julian's chest, lulled by the hush of cicadas. In that moment, she knew she had found her forever, not defined by anyone else's narrative, but written boldly alongside the man who saw her whole. 6 months later, Clara stood in a sunlit hall in Marlow Bay, preparing to open the first cohort of Key, the art and tech mentorship program she'd launched for women leaving controlling relationships. The name, short for knowledge, empowerment, and yes, captured the spirit of reclamation. The high-ceilinged room hummed with anticipation, easels holding past men's artwork, sleek MacBooks set up on long tables, and a banner overhead, "Key, unlock your creative future." Clara wore a crisp white blouse and navy pencil skirt, her professional armor as creative director and community advocate. Julian, standing beside her in charcoal slacks and a pale blue shirt, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. They'd spent months fundraising, recruiting mentors, and refining the curriculum, combining mentorship in design thinking, emotional resilience workshops, and portfolio development. "Ready?" Julian asked, voice hushed. Clara inhaled, eyes scanning the assembled crowd. 40 women of varied backgrounds, young, old, some clutching portfolios, others clutching heart-shaped rocks or rosaries. Each carried her own story. Clara felt a pang of recognition, like looking in a mirror that reflected both her past and her future. She took the mic. "Welcome to Key. Your presence here is a declaration that you matter, that your voice matters. Over the next 6 weeks, we'll explore art, technology, and healing. You'll learn how to turn your pain into power and expression." The crowd responded with heartfelt applause. As she stepped down, she caught the eye of Ella, who had become a volunteer mentor. Ella raised her cane in a salute. Clara smiled, a bridge between past and present, carrying the wisdom of generations. That afternoon, a short documentary screening debuted on a mounted projector, She Rose, Stories of Resilience. It featured 5 women from the pilot cohort, each anonymous silhouette recounting how they left abusive partnerships, toxic boards, or stifling careers. Their voices, resonant and raw, echoed across the hall. After, in the reception area, champagne glasses clinked. Clara circulated, speaking quietly with mints. One woman, Madison, named after the song on Clara's first podcast episode, approached her with trembling gratitude. "Your journey gave me courage to leave my supervisor who eroded my confidence." Clara smiled, pressing a hand to Madison's. "You deserve to create your future. Thank you for letting me be part of it." Later, as the sun dipped below the marshland horizon, Julian and Clara stood on the boardwalk, watching the sky blaze in orange and pink. "We did it," Julian murmured, wrapping an arm around her. Clara leaned into him, eyes reflecting the painted sky. "We did." Her gaze drifted to the dunes where she once sketched her way back to life. Now, her sketches lined Key's gallery, her voice amplified by countless hearts. In Marlow Bay, a place that had once sheltered her retreat, she had built a sanctuary for others to rise. Late on a Saturday evening, Clara hosted a private viewing in the Confluence Lab's main gallery, the final frame. Under soft LED lighting, her most personal works hung, self-portraits painted in charcoal, watercolors depicting the cabin and dunes, and a series titled Exodus showing a lone silhouette walking away from a penthouse skyline. Each piece traced her metamorphosis from abandoned wife to visionary leader. A hush fell as she welcomed a handful of longtime supporters: Eleanor, Ella, Madeline, Isha, and several ments from Key. Julian stood proudly at her side. A hush settled as Clara raised a glass of sparkling rose cider. "Thank you all for being here," she said, voice steady but warm. "This exhibit is more than art. It's proof that sometimes you don't need closure. You just need to walk away, in a limo." She turned to the final painting, a hyper-realistic acrylic of a black Lincoln Town car gliding away from a glass skyscraper at dawn, Clara's silhouette visible in the rear window. "So often, we wait for the perfect moment. Closure, forgiveness, reconciliation," she continued. "But sometimes, we just need courage to leave behind what no longer serves us." A soft round of applause rippled through the gallery. Julian pressed a kiss to her cheek. Moments later, a young artist from Key, Raina, approached, eyes glittering. "How did you know it would all work out?" Clara turned to face her, studying the future in Raina's bright gaze. She placed a hand on her shoulder. "I didn't," she said honestly. "I just stopped waiting to be chosen. Instead, I chose myself." As the gallery lights dimmed and the guests wandered toward the exit, Clara lingered before the final frame. Outside, the city's hum drifted through the narrow window. She closed her eyes, the echo of her own footsteps blending with those of every woman who had walked away before sunrise. In that final moment, Clara Barnes knew her story was no longer about what she lost. It was about what she gained: freedom, purpose, and a legacy that would outlive any partnership. With a gentle smile, she whispered into the dimmed gallery, "I chose me." And with that, the screen faded to black. "I'm glad you made it to the end."